The voters, a lot of them out there, tens of millions of them out there, by the way, don't care what he's going through right now. They don't care about his guilt or innocence, his perceived guilt or innocence. They don't care about the 91 counts. They're thinking about their lives. And a lot of times we see politicians taking the positions that they're taking. And while we can respect their candor and their honesty, they do seem a bit detached at times from what the voters are actually feeling. Charlemagne the God said it best when he said, Joe Biden is not inspiring at all. You almost get the impression that the Democrats who are pushing for Joe Biden to get 4 more years, because that's what they were chanting at the State of the Union address, 4 more years, 4 more years. The man's going to be 82 in November, and you chant for 4 more years. But you've got progressive leftists on this side chanting for 4 more years. I don't know if they know how embarrassing that is, okay? Okay, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that when you're doing that, I'm looking at them, and I'm saying to myself, come on now. This is utterly ridiculous. You think this is going to get it done.
All right, folks. Well, today we have yet another example of a Stephen A. Smith struggle session. And the reason I call it a struggle session is because, especially recently, Stephen A. has been doing this thing where he will vehemently defend Trump. He will acknowledge, like he did on the PBD podcast, that a lot of his values, at least nowadays, are more so conservative. He will rip the crap out of Biden. Okay, this guy talks like someone who would be lining up to vote for Donald Trump. And yet he'll turn around and still say, but I'm a Biden supporter, though. But I will still be voting for Biden in the November election. Why? I don't know. Some have made the argument that he is too scared to come out and admit that he actually likes Trump nowadays because of Hollywood. Others may say that the guy has a peak case of Trump derangement syndrome. And in many ways, that's exactly what it looks like in its final stages. Okay, so maybe you eventually hit the stage where you come to accept, hey, maybe Donald Trump just really is not that bad, right? But this is the final stage of the derangement, because you will now find yourself unable to defend Biden. You will basically acknowledge all the arguments for Trump, but I still don't like Trump. But I still don't like Donald Trump's personality, as he said on the PBD podcast. But anyways, this week, a couple days after that, he was on CNN to discuss the Trump-Biden issue. I once again continue to ask this question of why exactly do people take his political opinions so seriously? He's a sportscaster, and yet he seems to get more airtime than some people who actually, I don't know, work in politics or cover politics for a living. But still, I digress. Listen to Stephen A. on CNN tear into Joe Biden. Here you go.
I don't think it was a very wise statement on her part. How did that work out for her in 2016? I think that's something that we have to recognize. Yes, she won the popular vote, but at the end of the day, she wasn't the president of the United States.
So this is in response to Hillary Clinton earlier saying that if you're undecided between Trump and Biden, just get over it. The choice is obvious. We shouldn't have to make, this is what she was saying, we should not have to make the argument for Joe Biden because it's self-explanatory, AKA they don't have one, right? So that's what's being referenced here.
It was him. You can look at her not campaigning in Wisconsin in the last days, not campaigning in Pennsylvania in the last days. You can look at some of the stuff that they were saying about her that sort of distracted things from where it should have been in terms of Comey and his report from the FBI. You can bring up a whole bunch of things, but at the end of the day, the last thing you need to do is to do anything that could agitate a potential voter in this particular election.
What do you make about the actual argument that she's making? I mean, she's basically saying 2 old people, yes, but they're substantively different. I mean, Trump has 91 counts against him.
Well, listen, nobody's brought that up more than me. 4 indictments, 91 counts, impeached twice. I'm not voting for him. I've said that to a lot of people. I've said that to you. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that at some point in time, you got to take into account what the voters thinking about. The voters, a lot of them out there, tens of millions of them out there, by the way, don't care what he's going through right now. They don't care about his guilt or innocence, his perceived guilt or innocence. They don't care about the 91 counts. They're thinking about their lives. And a lot of times we see politicians taking the positions that they're taking. And while we can respect their candor and their honesty, they do seem a bit detached at times from what the voters are actually feeling and what the voters are actually thinking. Nobody wants to hear that from Hillary Rodham Clinton at this particular moment in time, because especially if you're Joe Biden, what are you really worried about right now? You're worried about folks coming to the polls. You're worried about them showing up to the polls to vote for you. You're not worried even about them voting for Trump. You're worried about them not showing up to vote for you. That doesn't exactly encourage them to get up out of their seats and go to the polls.
It's so true, too. It's so true, right? CNN will continue to do this thing and they'll all do this thing. But the indictments that we threw out there politically, and Stephen A is just bringing up, look, I'm a Biden supporter, guys. But the truth is, a lot of people don't really care, okay? Because I think a lot of America sees through it. They understand that it's political. And even the side that really doesn't, I think there's a lot of voters out there that also say, well, I may think Donald Trump is kind of a crook, but the other politicians are crooks too, so who really cares? I'm not saying that. I'm saying some people probably think like this. But at the end of the day, my life was better off 4 years ago than it was now, okay? I just read a thing today that said the average income required to own a home in 2020 was $76,000, or to afford a home, I should say, $76,000 a year. Under Trump, that number was basically around there. I think 2019 was like $77,000. Folks, in 2024, it is $115,000. Just read this today. This is the average amount of money that you need to make each year to be able to afford a home. That's almost a $50,000 difference, okay? Are people making $50,000 more dollars in 2024 than they were in 2020? Absolutely not. And so I think what Stephen A is saying here is, look, when it comes down to it, a lot of people are going to look at that. A lot of people are going to look at the fact that this situation at the border, which, by the way, is the top issue for voters. This has been polled repeatedly, and that's good news for Trump, by the way. If the core issue being voted on in November is immigration, Biden, obviously for self-explanatory reasons, loses the argument on immigration. We find in these polls, the American public overwhelmingly, even a lot of people who are not so pro-Trump in other areas, do acknowledge Trump was much better for us on immigration, right? So this is what Stephen A is saying, but he will still always qualify that by saying, but look, I'm not voting for him because I'm trying to fit in with the media, with Hollywood. Look, I get it. I'm Trump deranged too, but he has this degree of self-awareness where he says, but the normal people outside of our little bubble where all we know how to say is January 6th, but Donald Trump's a threat to democracy, 91 criminal indictments, 4 arrests. How can you remember, the talking points? A lot of people outside of our little world look beyond that stuff. They look at tangible stuff. They look at substantive stuff that actually matters. Now, on the flip side, I say to Stephen A. Smith, if you understand these arguments and you seem to understand it pretty well, I'll give him credit for that. He seems to really have a finger on the pulse of how these people feel. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Okay, why do you still say at the end of the day, I'm still going to vote for Biden? Well, folks, last week on the PBD podcast, Stephen A explained this, which is essentially, yeah, Trump is better in the vast majority of material regards, in tangible accomplishments, in just how the country was when he was president, but I just don't like his personality. I just don't like his vibes. And folks, that is again what I call peak Trump derangement syndrome, where you're not even a liberal. You agree with a lot of the things he did, but you just don't like his vibe. Check out the clip.
My belief is I'm going to vote for Biden. Now, you have to remember, it's how you're looking at the presidential election might be a little bit different than me. For example, I'm the kind of person that might vote for the president being a Democrat and every other position Republican. Every senator, every congressional figure, every local. In other words, because I view the presidency, I understand it's the commander-in-chief, I get it, but I view, and listen, I will preface it by saying I'm open to correction, I truly am. I view the presidency as more of a statesmanship position. If I interviewed Trump, I would look him in his face and tell him why. I'm not calling you a racist. I'm not saying that all of your policies were wrong. Hell, the economy was thriving before COVID. I remember. But you don't know how to act. I said, you don't care what you say. You don't care about how divisive you come across. You don't have any sensitivity whatsoever to how you scare the living hell out of people with your rhetoric and with your aloof. I don't know if the word is aloofness or just a disregard for the importance of unity. You believe in America, I believe in America. Let me tell you what I believe in about America. I believe that when we're together, nothing can stop us.
So every time I watch and listen to that, I'm especially frustrated, okay? Because it's one thing to disagree with Trump on policy and you're just on the other side and that's why you're against him. It's another to say, yeah, the country was better off, but the vibes, guys, the emotion, like literally acknowledging he is an emotional voter who does not vote on substance. That's literally what he is saying there. But, I'll close the video by saying this. I still ultimately think that it's a net positive when he does this stuff. I'll tell you why. You may say, how can that be a positive thing? Stephen A. will make all the arguments for Trump, but he still won't vote for Trump. Well, I'll tell you why for this reason is he may never come to vote for Trump or never come to support Trump. But I guarantee you a lot of people in the middle, maybe people more so on the left who are fans of Stephen A. or for some reason are taking his political opinion seriously, they may listen to it and say, Stephen A. made a lot of good arguments. He kind of just pointed out why Trump is good, but he doesn't want to vote for him. But maybe I will, right? This is what's important sometimes is this is why sometimes it's better to change the mind of someone in the center, for instance, if someone else in the center says it to them, because they look at us, they say, we're conservative, we're Republican, we're partisan, right? But someone like Stephen A. going out and saying that, it gets your brain thinking a little bit, right? And very often when you hear information, not everyone reaches the same exact conclusion. And that's why I say maybe it's a good thing that someone who's not on our side is going out and saying stuff like this, Stephen A. Smith, Bill Maher, because maybe someone watching is thinking it through a little bit better than they are. Does that make sense? Right? Or better yet, let's say Stephen A. is not the catalyst, the pipeline of actually red pilling someone and getting someone to turn a full 180 and vote for Donald Trump. Okay, but you know what else it does? It lowers the enthusiasm for Joe Biden on the other side. You may be asking, Vince, what effect does that have? Well, this election is going to be a very big battle when it comes to turnout, okay? And that's the thing. A lot of Joe Biden's voters from 2020, that quote unquote 81 million that we hear all about, newsflash, they're a lot less enthusiastic. Even the ones who have not come all the way to where they support Trump now, which I think some have, but even the ones who haven't, if they just don't care enough about this election, if they're just not excited or enthused enough to really go out to the polls and vote for Joe Biden, as Stephen A. actually brings up in that clip itself, right? If some of these Democrats are kind of disaffected, we'll call it, and if Trump manages, which he is an energy candidate, there's certainly a lot more people on our side are energized for him than on the other side for Joe Biden, then the turnout game that screwed us over a lot in 2020, among many other things, because the opposition was so mobilized, so energized. Of course, the election laws were also in their favor to drive up turnout, one could argue artificially there, right? He may not get that bailout in 2024, and that's something to be enthused about. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on the Stephen A. Smith struggle session in the comment section down below. Why do you think he will continually make the argument that it really is defending Trump and making Trump sound a lot better than Biden, but still just, I don't get it? In the comment section down below. And until next time, Alpha Moves Only, God bless. Be sure to like and subscribe, and peace.